All right, today we're going to be going over Team Drill 2. This covers the Modified Observed Firing Chart. Let's get into it. All right, so right when we open up, we have a very busy data sheet that we're going to have to do some things with. The thing I like to do to start with is just transfer that information over to my board so I have a quick reference to it later and I'm not looking back and forth between my data sheets and my future computer records. So I'll copy down my GI of 9956, get my MFP grid up there, 00350, 54480, get my altitude of 530, our mounting azimuth says 5250, and our reefer deflection is 0700. All right, so now we have this GI, what are we gonna do with it? We're going to start by indexing 0. We're going to drop down 2000 and place the first numbers from the GI. In this case, we have 99. That's our easting. Now we're going to have our northing of 56 for our GI. So we'll go left 2000 from the pivot point, and we'll place our 56. Now, just like a map, as you go up, the northings increase. So we'll go 56, 57, 58. And then as you go down, they decrease. So 55, 54, put a little slash there. Now for our eastings, as you go left, the numbers decrease. So we go from 99 to 98, and then 97. Jumping 1,000 each time we're doing this, because we're making essentially this plotting board into a map. Now here, after 99 comes 100, so that's just going to become 0, 0. As you pass from 99 onto the next one, it will be 0, 0. And after 0, 0, 0, 1. And now we have our map placed on our board. From there, we just have to plot our MFP. So 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, 0, 0, 3. And one more little green box is going to be the 5, 0. And then 5, 4, 4, 8. We're at 5, 4, 5, 4, 1. 542, 543, 544. Now that last 8 is going to be somewhere in between this last green box and the last black box. So we'll just place a little dot to signify our MFP and get rid of our reference lines. We can now hollow cross our MFP, label it, and drop our altitude of 530 right below there. Now we also have an FO grid, and he is at 9826, 5486. So in the same way that we plot our MFP, we're going to plot our FO. We got 98, 981, 982, and 6 is going to be somewhere just past 9825. So we'll put a little reference line there. His northing is 5486, so 545, 546, 547, 548. And now I know he's somewhere past this next one. So along our 2 reference lines, we'll place a little plot. And that becomes our FO. So once we get that plot down, draw our FO symbol around it. His observer ID is Sierra 25. Take away our little reference lines and drop his altitude of 630. Now looking at our mounting azimuth of 5250, we can bring it over to that and begin imposing our reefer deflection scale. So we have 07 as our reefer, go left 400, and right 400. Now we have our board set up, we can start receiving missions. But a little note here at the top, it says to forward plot Charlie Delta 0599 and Charlie Delta 0600. And down in our target data, you'll see that we have our deflections and ranges for both of those targets. So we'll look at the first one, Charlie Delta 0599. we're going to index that deflection. We have 0.698. Get that lined up. And it says it's at a chart range of 3,300 meters. So we'll grab our range arm, go straight up from our MFP, making sure we're nice and parallel. And we'll place our plot at 3,300 meters away. We can label this target now as Charlie Delta 0059. And since they give us an altitude, we could also place that 530. All right, now we're gonna do Charlie Delta 0600. They say it's a deflection of 0570. So we'll index that deflection. Grab our range arm. This target's at 2,200 meters from us. So we'll line up our range arm, make sure it's parallel. Go up to 2,200 meters and place our plot. Zero 599. All right, so now we have our modified observed chart fully set up with our MFP or FO and the two targets that they requested we forward plot. We also have our reefer deflection scale up at the top, and we can move on to the next portion of this team drill. All right, now moving into the safety diagram. We'll just put that center of the board since we're not using our board for this. We have all the pertinent information we need down here in our bottom. So the first thing I like to do is find my direction of fire. I'll take my left limit azimuth and my right limit azimuth, and I'll find the difference between the two. We're given 5580 for our right limit. So we'll take 5580 and subtract 4880, which is our left limit, and that's gonna give us a difference of 700. Divide that by 2, that's gonna give us 350, and then add that to your left limit, or you can subtract it from your right limit, and that'll give you a direction of fire of 5230. Round that to the nearest 50, and that's gonna give us a mounting azimuth of 5250. Now that's how they did the math in the first place to get that, but you can also just look back at your data sheet and it's right there for you already. Let's also bring over this reefer deflection of 0700. Since we're firing at 81, we can circle that. And then pull our coordinates, which is 0035, 5448. That is just your MFP grid. Notice down here as well, you have another spot for mounting azimuth. You will put it twice. So there we go. All right, now pulling this information up, we have a minimum range of 400 meters, and a maximum range of 4,000 meters. Our max charge and min charge, we got a max charge of 4 and a minimum charge of 0. Now I'd like to go ahead and go into here, place our left limit azimuth, place our right limit azimuth, and now we can figure out what the corresponding deflections are. To do that, we'll first need to find this variance here, and this is asking from your mounting azimuth, how many mils to the left do you have? So we'll take our mounting azimuth of 5250 and subtract our left limit azimuth 4880. That's going to give me a deviation of 370 mils. Since we're going left and the rule for deflection is left add, right subtract, we can just add that 370 to our reefer deflection of 0700, and that's going to give us a left limit deflection of 1070. All right, now we're going to do that process again for the right deviation, but this time we'll start with our right limit of 5580, and then we'll subtract our mounting azimuth of 5250 to get a variation of 330. We'll take that 330, and since we're going right here, for our deflection, we're going to have to subtract this 330 from our reefer deflection of 100. So 0700 minus 330, and that'll give us a right limit deflection of 370. All right, now we are almost done. We just have to pull the corresponding charge and elevations for our minimum and max charge. We'll start by looking at our minimum charge. If our minimum range is 400 meters, we have to determine what charges can hit 400 meters. When you look at your charge versus range, you'll find that charge 0 can hit 400 meters, as can charge 1. Same thing for charge 4. We'll go up here. We'll notice that charge 4 can hit it, as well as charge 3. We'll go over to our TFT and pull the corresponding elevations for that. So at charge 0, our max elevation is going to be 1099. So just go into charge 0 at 400 and get your corresponding elevation. Then you can go to your charge 1, find 400, and that's going to be 1498. Same thing applies for our max charge and minimum elevation. We'll just turn to the corresponding charges. Charge 3 at 4,000 is going to give us an elevation of 1055. Move to charge 4. And that would give us 1185. Now I know I bounced around a little bit here, did things in out of order. You can fill this out in any order you like as long as all the information gets presented there. All right, moving on to situation alpha. Sierra 25 calls up adjust fire grid, gives us our grid, his OT direction, altitude, and says we have an anti-tank weapon. So actions on the plotting board. Since we have a grid, we can plot it on this map that we've imposed on the plotting board. We just need to make sure that we're indexed at 0, 0, 0, 0, and then plot it like we would on any map. So 974, make my reference line, and then 562. Place our plot. Give it a circle. And now we can bring that parallel with our MFP. We can pull our chart data. I'm getting a deflection of 0.613. I can pull my chart range. I'm getting 3,400. Pull my azimuth. I'm getting 533.7. All right, now we have to consider something. They gave us an altitude of this target. So we have to compare that with our own altitude to determine if we need to make any corrections to adjust for the change in altitude. Our altitude is 530, theirs is 550, so that's going to give you a difference of 20. That will be your vertical interval. And since this one's higher, it's going to be a positive, so we'll write our positive 20 as our vertical interval. Now, since we're working with a modified observed firing chart, we will follow the rule that any VI of less than 50, we do not compute or give an altitude correction. So when we come down here, we'll just write 0 for the altitude correction. Since our vertical interval is less than 50, our altitude correction is none, and we can move on from there. Looking at our charge versus range, at a range of 3,400, we can hit that with charge 2. Find our angle T. We're looking at the target at 5337. The FO is at 5200. So the difference in those two is 437. Record at the nearest 10. And since it's not in effect, we don't have to send it. Now, filling out our initial fire command, we have section in the fire for effect, so they're going to be the mortar following. Shell and fuse, we're shooting HE quick. Mortar fires number 2 gun, because they're adjusting. We have 1 round in the adjust. We have 2 rounds in the fire for effect. Our deflection we can bring over 0.613. Charge we already found to be charge 2. So now we'll pull the corresponding data for that. Go into table D, charge 2 at a range of 3,400. Our elevation is going to be 0.800. Pull our time of flight of 28.0 seconds. Go to table E, that's where we'll find our max ord. In this case, it is 0.953 or just 953 meters. We send that data to the gun line. 2 gun shoots it, so we can record it with our circle. Now we're waiting for our corrections from the FO, so we'll index his OT direction and stand by. The FO comes back, he says left 50, add 50, fire for effect. So we'll come up here, ensuring that we're still indexed at that OT direction. Go left 50, add 50. And this will be our plot for our fire for effect. So I'm going to go ahead and haul across it right here. This is Charlie Delta 0601. The altitude of 550. Bring that back to parallel over the MFP. I'm getting a deflection of 0.631. Get our range. And I'm getting 3,450. Now that we're in the fire for effect phase, mortar to fire has changed, so we'll tell section 2 rounds for the method of fire. Give them the corresponding deflection, 0.631. Now, what charge are we going to be in? 3,450 now bumps us into charge 3. Since the charge has changed, we'll place it there. And then we'll go into our TFT and pull the corresponding elevation. At 3,450, our elevation will be 1160. We send that down to the gun line. They all shoot. 4 guns shoot 2 rounds. So that's 8. In addition to this 1 will give us 9. And we'll circle it. FL comes back, end of mission, weapon destroyed. And we're now complete with situation Alpha, and we can move on to the next one. All right, moving on to situation Bravo, we get a call for fire to adjust fire with the grid. The observer gives us his OT direction and the altitude of the target as 500. Since we have a grid and we're using the modified observed method, we can go ahead and index 0 and plot that target as if it was a normal map. With 0 indexed, we'll come over to our scale on the bottom. Our easting is 973, so we'll go over 6 green boxes. The northing for this target is 548, so we'll go 54. We know this black line is 545, so then we'll go 3 more green boxes above that. We can place our little plot, circle it, and bring it parallel with our MFP. Pull some chart data here. We have a deflection of 1041. While I'm up here, I'll pull my azimuth. I got 4909. And pull our chart range. .3075. Now, since we have an altitude for the target and an altitude for MFP, we're going to have to determine our vertical interval. Our MFP is at 530, and the target's at 500, so we'll subtract 500 from our 530, and that's going to give us a negative 30 for our VI. Since the target is lower than us, it's negative. Now, once again, the rule with modified observed is any vertical interval that is less than 50 does not apply in altitude correction. So once we've labeled our vertical interval, we'll just check the box that it would be a negative, but that it's a 0. So now we can determine the charge based on this range. At 3075, that's going to be a charge 2 for our HE. Look at our angle T. We're at 4909. The FO is at 4900. So that's going to be 9 mils for our angle T, recorded to the nearest 10, and that gives us 10. Not in effect, so we won't send it. Now we can fill our initial fire command. We got a section following. We're going to be firing HE quick. Number 2 gun is the adjusting gun, and they're doing 1 round in the adjust. We're doing 2 rounds in the fire for effect. Bring over our deflection, 1041. Determine our chargers 2. And now we can pull the data from our TFT. Go into table D, find 3075, and that'll give us an elevation of 1013. Pull our time of flight, 33.0 seconds, and then flip to table echo to get our max ord. 1321 meters. We send that information to the gun line. When 2 gun gets there, fires 1 round, and now we can index our OT direction before we make our next correction. So we're at our OT direction, we're waiting. The FO comes back, he says right 100, drop 100. So we'll go right 100, and we'll drop 100, and place our new plot. Now we can bring it back to parallel with our MFP. And I'm getting a deflection of 1008. We can read our range with the range arm. I'm getting 2975. Mortar to fire doesn't change, nor does the method of fire. We can bring over our chart deflection of 1008. At a range of 2975, we look at our TFT. We're still in charge 2, so don't have to record a charge change. And at 2975, our corresponding elevation is 1046. We send that information to the gun line. 2 gun shoots another round, so we can record it and circle it. We'll go back to our OT direction and stand by for that correction. The FO comes back, he says add 50, fire for effect. So we'll make that change now. So we'll make that change. Go ahead and make it parallel with our MFP. And pull our chart data. I'm getting a deflection of 1009. I'm pulling a range of 3025. Since we're in the fire for effect phase, our mortar to fire does change. We have a section now. They're firing 2 rounds of the HE quick. Our deflection, bring it over. At this range of 3025, we're still in charge 2, so we don't need to restate a different charge. And then we'll just pull the corresponding elevation. 1030. Now we have 4 guns firing 2 rounds. That's going to be 8 rounds for this. Plus the 2 we fired earlier gives us 10 HE. FO comes back, says end of mission, target destroyed, and we can move on to our next target. Moving on to situation Charlie, we get a call for fire, adjust fire shift from Charlie Delta 0599. We have our OT direction, the corrections the FO makes from Charlie Delta 0599, and he says it's an enemy command post. So we'll go ahead and start by indexing our OT direction of 5100. and making the given corrections from Charlie Delta 0599. He wants us to go left 200 and drop 300. So use some sort of a reference or count boxes, whatever you fancy. Get our left 200, and then we'll drop 300 and place a plot. From there, we can go ahead and circle it and label it as a 1, and begin pulling our chart data. Bring it parallel with the MFP. I'm getting a chart deflection of 0.750. The azimuth that corresponds to that is 5200. And we can pull our chart range, which I'm getting 2975. All right. Now we have been giving a altitude shift for this. So from Charlie Delta 0599, the altitude is up 60. So we'll take our altitude of Charlie Delta 0599, which is 530. We will add 60 to it, and that's going to give us the new target altitude of 590. I like to write it up in that box just so I don't forget. And now I can determine my vertical interval and altitude correction if we are going to be applying it. So we'll take our 590, we'll take away the MFP's altitude of 530, and that's going to give us 60. So our vertical interval is 60, and because this target is higher than our MFP, it will be positive. Now going back to that rule about less than 50, we don't do altitude corrections. Now we're above 50, so we're going to divide that 60 in half to get 30. We'll check the box for positive, and that's going to give us an altitude correction of positive 30. So now we have to add this 30 to our 2975, which is going to give us 3005 rounded to the nearest 25, because that's all we can go into at our charge book. We're going to get an adjusted range of 3000. The lowest charge that we can use to hit that is charge 2. So we'll go ahead and determine and record that now and calculate our angle T. We're at 5200. The FO's at 5100. So I determine it to be 100. Record it to the nearest 10, which obviously it's already there. So we write it as 100. Not in effect, so we don't have to send it. Now we can look at our initial fire command. We have a section following. Our shell and fuse is going to be HE quick. Our mortar to fire, we got number 2 gun adjusting with 1 round in the adjust. We're doing 3 rounds of the HE quick, so just 3 rounds in the fire for effect. Bring over our deflection, 0750, charge 2. And now we can pull the data from our TFT. Go into table delta at 3000. Our elevation is going to be 1038. Time of flight is 33.5. Moving into table E, our corresponding max ord is 1362. We send that information to the gun line. 2 gun shoots that round. So then we can just circle it, record it. And now we can stand by our OT direction, wait for the correction. But before we can even get there, the FO comes back and says, fire for effect. So we have no data change here. We're just ready to go. We'll record our chart deflection of 0750. We can just bring everything down. Our chart range was 2975. But remember, we also have this altitude correction. So I'm going to put a little reminder right here underneath the range so I don't forget to add that over here. Now for mortar to fire, we're shooting the section now. Method of fire is changed to 3 rounds. And now we have to pay attention to our FDC order because I can't just drop over this information and have the whole section shoot. The chief wants us to converge on 2-gun. So I know each gun is going to have different data. And 2-gun will be the gun that we're using for the master deflection. So 0750 will go to 2-gun. And now we can enter our deflection conversion table. Since we're using a modified observed chart, aka not surveyed, we're going to enter the DCT at our final chart range. Final chart range rounded to the nearest 100, in this case is 3,000. So we'll go to our 3,000. We know each gun is 40 meters apart, so wherever those two intersect is going to be our mil change. In our case, we have a change of 14. Now, once again, it's helpful sometimes if you just draw the guns out. 2 guns landing here. We need 1 gun to go left, 3 gun to go right, and 4 gun to go right twice, essentially. So, remembering left add, right subtract. If we want 1 gun to go left, we have to add that 14 to 2 guns deflection. So, their new deflection will be 0764. Now for number 3 gun, we'll take away that 14 from 0750. And that'll give us 0736. You can either take away 14 from 3 guns to get 4 guns, or you can do 14 times 2, which is 28, and take that away from 2 guns. And that would give you 0722. Now in the charge spot, our charge does not change, but we do have an adjusted command range based off of this. So we'll just put the range at which we're going to pull in our information for. And then our elevation of 1038. We have 4 guns shooting 3 rounds, so that's 12, plus the 1 from earlier, and that'll give us 13 HE. Now in all actuality, there's only a few elements that actually changed here, right? You had your section for the mortar fire, the method of fire, and then all these deflections. So theoretically, I don't have to put this chart data, I don't have to put this adjusted range, but I will put this elevation just to confirm with the gun line that that's all the info they have. I like to be thorough with it. You're never going to lose points for putting all the information in there. So just a little note on why I did that there. The FO comes back, he says end of mission, command post destroyed, and now we can record that target on our board and move on to our next situation. Moving on to situation delta, we get a adjust fire polar. We are given an OT direction, a distance, and then a vertical interval of down 80. Now this is in relation to our FO. So whenever I get something like that, I like to just immediately figure out that new altitude. Our FO is at 630. So I'll do 630 minus, because he wants us to go down from him, 80, minus 80, and that'll give us a target altitude of 550. Now I can go ahead and plot this on my board. I'll index that OT direction of 6010, and then I'll go up 2,200 from my FO. Place down my range arm. Make sure it's nice and straight. Make a mark. And that becomes my target plot. Now I can go into pulling my chart data by parallel plotting that point with my MFP. Okay. Now I'm pulling a deflection of 0442, an azimuth of 5508, and a chart range of 3,800. Now for our vertical interval and altitude correction, we got to determine the distance between our target's altitude and our MFP altitude. Our target's higher, so I'll start with my target's altitude of 550, take away the MFP altitude of 530. That'll give us a positive 20 for our vertical interval. And since once again, we're following that rule of being on a non-surveyed chart, since our vertical interval is less than 50, we will have 0 for altitude correction. So now let's determine the charge for our range. At 3,800, we will be in charge 3. Now I can calculate angle T. Our FO is at 6010, and we'll minus R's of 5508. That's going to give us 502. So I determine it to be 502. I know it's in effect. When I write it down here, I'm going to record it to the nearest 10, which in my case, 502 becomes 500. And then send it to the nearest 100, which is already there. So I'll just say angle T is 500. Now I can work with my initial fire command. Mortar to follow, we have section. Shell and fuse, we're shooting HE quick and adjust, so we'll just tell them HE quick. Mortar to fire, we're adjusting with 2-gun, so number 2. Method of fire, so we have 1 round of HE quick in the adjust, so just 1 round in adjust. But then HE and red phos in the fire for effect, broken up by 1 and 3, shooting 2 rounds of red phos, 2 and 4, shooting 2 rounds of HE. So it'll look something like 1 and 3, 2 red phos, 2 and 4, 2 HE in fire for effect. Bring over our deflection, 0442. Our charge is going to be charge 3. We already determined that. So now we just got to pull the requisite elevation, time of flight, and max forward. Entering table D at a range of 3,800 is going to give you an elevation of 1097, a time of flight of 41.0 seconds. And then we'll go to table E to pull our max order. At 3,800, that's 2035. We send all this information to the gun line, 2-gun shoots it, and we've shot 1 HE. Now, since we're waiting for a correction, we can go back to our OT direction and stand by. The FO comes back with right 100, add 100. So we'll go ahead and get on the plotting board, make our adjustment, and then bring it back parallel with our MFP. Right now I'm getting a deflection of 0405. For our chart range. We'll go 3850. Mortar fire doesn't change, neither does method of fire. We're still adjusting here, so we just bring over our deflection 0405. At 3850, we're still in charge 3, so we don't have to change anything there. But we'll give the new elevation, which is going to be 1087. We send that out. 2-gun shoots that second adjustment, so we can record it, and then index our OT direction while we await for our correction. Now we're standing by our OT direction. The FO comes back and he says, add 50, fire for effect. So we'll go ahead and make that adjustment. And bring it back over our MFP to get our data. Now I'm pulling a chart deflection of 0401. A range of 3875. Now, since we're in the fire for effect phase, we got to remember we're doing all sorts of crazy stuff here. We are firing a section, but we're going to have two different lines of method of fire because we're going to have to put out 2 bits of data for the guns. Since we've been working with HE, I like to put the HE shooting guns up first. So I'll say, hey, 2 and 4 gun to HE. Give them their deflection of 0401. And then give them the corresponding elevation for 3875, 1082. That's going to be 2 guns firing 2 rounds each. So that's 4 HE for this shot, plus this 2 before. That gets us at 6 HE. Now we can go into 1 and 3 gun. And we're shooting 2 red phos. Deflection isn't going to change. But since we're working with a different round type, we're going to want to tell them what charge they're working with. In this case, we're also going to be in charge 3, but you're going to want to let them know since it's a different round type. All right, so we'll give them charge 3, and then we'll go find our corresponding fuse setting and elevation for them in our TFT. So flipping over to red phos, we'll go to charge 3. In table D, we'll find that the elevation is 0901 and the fuse setting is 32.3 seconds. That's 2 guns shooting 2 red phos each, so 4 red phos, circle it. Now we shot all of our rounds in the fire for effect. The FO comes back, says end of mission, 5 trucks burning. And we're finished with this mission. Now another note here, you do not have to restate this deflection for 1 and 3 gun if it's not changing from the previous data. I like to always put it there. Like I said before, you're not going to lose points for adding that information, but you would not have to put this deflection again if you did not want to. And that completes Team Drill 2. Hopefully you guys found this helpful, and let me know what you think.